Hello, I'm Adam Ragusia, internet cook and the 5th most impressive guy at the gym during off hours. With the Mr. Olympia competition being just 1 week out, I thought this would be a good time for us to try to understand beef cuts a little bit better by studying beef cuts. In spite of our many meaningful differences, humans and cattle are strikingly close on the old phylogenetic tree of life. Our genomes are 80% identical, and so we have most of the same major organ systems and bones and muscles. Now, this walking anatomy chart from Nigeria by way of Dubai, where performance-enhancing drugs are basically legal, apparently. This guy is Chinedu Andrew Obikia, known professionally as Andrew Jacked. He's my pick to win the Olympia next week. I mean, by my pick, I mean he's the guy I want to win. Not necessarily that I expect him to win, but he could win. So Andrew Jacked's Instagram is going to be our model for today. We're going to start in the middle and work our way out. The abs right here. Spectacular abs on Andrew. And what muscle is this? It's the rectus abdominis. What is that on a beef cattle? It's the flank steak. The flank steak is the abs of the cow. And that's why you actually only have 2 flank steaks on an animal, because technically the rectus abdominis is, it's not 6 muscles as people often think, it's 2. It's 1 on each side of the midline here. People tend to think that each of these individual bumps is its own muscle, but it's not. It's just 2 muscles separated through the midline by 1 piece of connective tissue, and then sort of divided into these grid-like segments by other strips of connective tissue. It's a big sheet of thin muscle with sort of a webbing of connective tissue on top of it. That's what the abs are. And when you eat it on a cow, it's the flank steak. Now, the external obliques of the abs to the side, those might be included in the flank steak depending on how your butcher butchers it. But the internal obliques, the muscle that's behind that muscle to the side of the six-pack, the internal oblique is going to be your flap steak, which is one of those long sheets of meat that they use for like carne asada, similar to skirt steak, which is also from the same area underneath all of this abdominal muscle that's on the top. The skirt steak and also the onglet, the hanger steak, that's from the diaphragm, which is the muscle that allows you to breathe out. It pulls open the bag that is your lungs. That's all skirt steak and onglet, and all of that is underneath the abs. Bodybuilding is mostly about the superficial muscles, the muscles that are right on top that you can directly see. It's why it's such a superficial pursuit. All right, do the ab and thigh shot. There we go. So here we can see intercostal muscle, these little bumps here in between the ribs. When you eat like beef ribs, that's what you're eating. When you're eating them like corn, that's the meat in between the ribs. And then just above there, sort of these muscles here, this is called the serratus. And that is the short rib, or it's the best part of what people usually call the short ribs. And here's an easier one to see, the man boobs here, the pectoral muscle. What is that? That's the brisket. Generally not a very large muscle on humans unless you bench press, because bench pressing is kind of an unnatural movement. It doesn't really happen in the wild with humans that much. But on cattle, the pectoral muscle is huge because cattle don't have collarbones, and so a lot of that weight ends up going directly onto the muscle. Also, like half of their body weight is down on these front 2 limbs, and that load gets transferred directly onto that pectoral muscle there, and that's why the brisket is such an enormous muscle on a cow, and also very, very tough because it gets worked a lot, and that's why you need to braise it or smoke it to make it soft and delicious. Now, obviously, I'm using North American butchery terms today. The French think about beef in a totally different way. They call the brisket the poitrine de bœuf, which just means chest of the cattle. I know that thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Rosetta Stone. Look at all we've got here. Arabic, German, Greek, Hebrew, Irish, Farsi, Spanish, just tons of stuff. Let's go ahead and get a French lesson going. Une fille, that's the girl.
Un garçon.
Un garçon. So many terms from like French restaurants' gastronomy just come from their basic names for like boy and girl. Boy, bring me the bouffe.
La fille mange.
The girl eats. The thing about Rosetta Stone is that it immerses you in this world of not only spoken speech, listening and speaking, reading language, and also looking at pictures. It immerses you in all of these different senses and different ways that your brain has of processing information to help you make connections and learn language in the way that you would in real life.
Une fille.
Une fille. Le garçon mange.
Le garçon mange.
See, with true accent, Rosetta Stone can help you not only learn the words, but also learn how to say them in such a way that doesn't get you laughed out of the restaurant. And it's more than just the basic classes. Rosetta Stone is an all-in-one solution with live lessons, on-demand videos, stories, phrase books for when you're traveling. There's the audio companion. And it's made for the real world. You've got lessons that are as short as 5 minutes. Try Rosetta Stone right now with my link in the description. You can sign up for just one language that you might need for 50% off, and that's a lifetime membership. You've got it for the rest of your life. Or you can sign up for all of the languages and get 60% off. 60% off a lifetime membership for all of the Rosetta Stone languages with my link in the description right now. Thank you, Rosetta Stone. Anyway, learning about beef with Andrew Jacked. So let's talk about the shoulders. This muscle right here, this is called the deltoid in bodybuilding parlance, and cattle have deltoids too. But again, we're looking at kind of superficial muscles here, thin strips of muscle that have other muscles underneath them, like the rotator cuff muscle. So you have the infraspinatus, which is the flat iron steak, and the supraspinatus underneath here, which is called like the mock tender or the shoulder tender. All these pictures are from the University of Nebraska, by the way. They have an excellent beef chart on their website. Beef chart. I bet that's what they called Andrew Jacked in high school. Anyway, because all of these muscles of the shoulder are relatively small and they're all kind of jammed together in this kind of tangled, complex network. That's why the muscle that we get from that on a cow, we kind of refer to collectively as the chuck, right? With a muscle like this, you've got lots and lots of different little muscles all stuck together with bands of connective tissue. It's not just one muscle. We just kind of call it the chuck. We cut off big pieces of it called like the chuck roast or the chuck steak, and they're not all one thing because the muscles of the shoulder are complex and numerous. I get him into his front double biceps pose. Oh man, that's like the best in the world right now, I think. So the chuck section is generally considered to continue down into the upper arm or foreleg of the animal, and the biceps and the triceps, that's part of the chuck, generally referred to as the clod section of the chuck. Clod, not a very appetizing word. And then you can cut off like boneless pieces from the cow's arm that they call clod steaks. Sometimes clod steak just refers to the brachialis, which is a muscle that's underneath the biceps here. But as you go further down into the arm, the muscles get a whole lot thinner, especially here on Andrew Jacked, whose forearms are unfortunately his weakest body part. And what they usually do for this muscle is just to cut across it, cut through the bone, and you get these kind of like meaty donuts where there's this kind of thin round of meat surrounding a round of bone, and those are the shanks. You braise those up for ossobuco. All right, we'll turn him around, do the back poses, and we get a few more muscles that are considered to be part of the chuck. Some muscles of the upper back here, the teres minor and teres major, generally considered to be part of the chuck. Teres major, one of my favorite beef cuts, if you can get it. That really is like a shoulder tender, really, really tender, teeny little mini tenderloin situation. One of my favorite things if you can find it. I doubt very much that Andrew Jack's teres major would be tender were we to cook it up, because he uses it a lot to do these kinds of movements, sort of pulling the arms back. That's what those muscles are for. Cattle don't need that much range of motion for their forelimbs, right? They don't move their arms back very often, so that particular muscle is really, really unused on a cow and super tender. All right, now we're getting into the kind of marquee muscles of the back in terms of bodybuilding. The latissimus dorsi, the lats on either side, and the trapezius muscles, which come up here and then up on top of the shoulders there. The upper lats, upper traps would generally be considered part of the chuck on a beef animal. The lower lats and lower traps, these are really kind of superficial muscles. It's funny, we think of them as being a really big deal in bodybuilding, and they are, but they're still relatively thin muscles. There's other muscles underneath them that guys like Andrew developed to make these superficial muscles kind of bulge out. On a cow, these superficial muscles like the lats and the lower traps are even thinner because the cow just does not use the muscles of its back that much because it mainly just stands around on its forelimbs, all four limbs, eating their cud, right? So these are really, really thin sheets of meat on a cow, and they normally just get peeled off and used for a hamburger, or they might be present as kind of teeny little cross-cut strips that are attached to the bigger muscles that comprise the kind of really, really famous steaks that that are cross-cut from the back of cattle. Talking about the deep muscles that run along the spine, like the longissimus. Humans have that, cattle do too. The longissimus, when cross-cut, is your ribeye steak or your ribeye roast. The longissimus is one of the spinal erectors, the muscles that help you kind of stand upright. Bodybuilders only show their spinal erectors kind of down here in this lower back area. Otherwise, the spinal erectors are underneath these marquee muscles like the lats and the traps. On cattle who stand around on four legs all day, those deep muscles of the back along the spine just don't do very much, and so they're very, very tender. That's why those are like the tender, expensive steak cuts. Like the psoas major muscle, which kind of starts middle way up the back and then goes down and connects at the pelvis, I think. That's the tenderloin, right? It's what we use as humans to pull our legs up toward ourselves. It's for hip flexion, but cows just don't need much hip flexion in their daily life, and so that muscle goes almost completely unused. It's why it's the tenderest muscle on the entire cow. It's the tenderloin, the fillet, psoas major. All right, now it's time to do some butt stuff. You can see Andrew's gluteus medius right here, sort of the upper glute. That would be considered on a cow a part of the sirloin, maybe, or sirloin is what we would call it in American butchery. In the UK, they call it the rump. But the lower gluteus muscles, the lower butt muscles there, that we generally consider to be part of the round on a cow. The round is this very large and unfortunately very tough and kind of dry area of the beef animal, generally ground up and used for hamburger or just really, really cheap roasts. Fortunately, there is proportionally less gluteus and associated muscles on a cow than there is on a human, because remember, they walk around on four legs, and so only half their body weight is going onto their rear appendages. With us, we walk around on two legs, and so all of Andrew Jack's 300 pounds, well, probably 290 contest weight, all of that incredible amount of weight is going down onto these muscles right here, which is why they are the largest muscles in the human body. We go down the leg into the hamstrings here, the muscles of the back of the leg, and this is unfortunately one of Andrew's other weak body parts, relatively speaking. To a mere mortal, this is completely insane. But ham is an Old English or Germanic word that just refers to the hollow at the back of the knee. So whether it's the back leg of a human or the back leg of a pig, we call it a ham, and the strings are where, the muscles get kind of long and stringy down toward the knee. That's what you got right here, the hamstrings. On the inside of his leg here, you can see his semitendinosus muscle. That's the eye of round roast. And then on the outside, we see the biceps femoris, the biceps of the femur. Arnold Schwarzenegger and other old school bodybuilders used to call the hamstrings the leg biceps for this very reason. They bend the knee the same way that the biceps bend the elbow. On a cow, that leg biceps there is generally called the bottom round roast. Not a great roast, better for hamburger, I think. Now, at the bottom of the leg, we have the calves. And like a lot of bodybuilders of West African descent, Andrew has highly inserted calves. They don't go down very far, which kind of limits how big he can grow them. But Andrew has done a lot with what he has. He's got really bulbous soleus and gastrocnemius, I think is what it's called. On a cow, sometimes they cut boneless steaks off of these muscles that they might call like round steak or heel steak. They might cross-cut through the bone and just call them really big, meaty shanks. You get more shanks down here on the lower part of the leg. All right, well, flipping back around, and the only other big area of meat that we need to talk about is the thigh muscle, the front of the thigh, what we call the quads in bodybuilding, the quadriceps. Cattle have all of these. You've got the teardrop shape there. That's the vastus medialis. The outside sweep of the leg is defined by the vastus lateralis. You've got the intermedius in the middle and a whole bunch of other muscles here at the front of the thigh that are referred to collectively on cattle as the beef knuckle. The knuckle is generally considered to be part of the round, and not great meat, generally ground up for a hamburger and stuff, although certain steak cuts you can do like London broil from inside these muscles. Andrew Jack is not going to be ground up for hamburger. In fact, I think that he could make mincemeat out of his competition at the Mr. Olympia 1 week hence from the posting of this video. Andrew, I'd love to see you win. You're never going to look as thick as the guys like Hadi Chupin and Derek Lunsford because you're so tall and you've got long limbs, but you're big enough now, and so I think the key to winning is just you got to come in ultra shredded, super conditioned, sacrifice some size, just come in really, really scary shredded like you never have before, and then you can beat them on aesthetics, just the way that Sean Roden beat Phil Heath in 2018. I'm pulling for you, buddy. And then afterwards, you can treat yourself to a big ol' hamburger. Thank you for helping us learn more about beef, oh man of beef.